And now we have Mila, who is going to tell us all about how Zoom is helping enable us in this new world, and also a little bit more about just how we're all dealing with winning in the new normal. So, Mila, thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Hi, Elaine. Good to see
Hello.
you. Not on Zoom for a change.
I know we had to throw things. We had to throw you a loop and make it a little bit different today. Give you a different experience.
Great.
Well, my guest today is Mila Ferrell. Mila is one of the early product leaders at Zoom. She's built a lot of the features that we all use every day. She led the redesign of the Zoom interface and has helped to found and launch the Zoom app marketplace. So if you've ever used any of the additions to Zoom or integrations, Mila and her team have been responsible for that, including partnerships like Dropbox and Slack and others with deep integrations into Zoom. So Mila, I know you have a ton of expertise on this topic in general, but maybe we could just start off with a little bit about you and your background and how you kind of came to be where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, first of all. I think you've covered a lot of the things that I worked on at Zoom. And prior to Zoom, I had my own startup. And prior to that, I was at Google. So was kind of a long journey to product, but I'm very happy that I got here.
Amazing. Amazing. So I know we have a bunch of things we wanted to discuss, but I can't help myself. Today is also Zoomtopia, which is your massive user conference. And there's been a ton of announcements coming through my email about all the things that Zoom is launching today. So if there's anything that you're able to share or willing to talk about, I would love to hear a little bit about what you guys are thinking as the next chapter enabling the events with on Zoom and some of the Zaps and things like that, which I'm sure is core to what your team is doing.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share. So it's for some of you who actually watched the keynote this morning, Eric, our founder and CEO, he highlighted that the cornerstone of everything for Zoom is delivering happiness to our customers. So everything we do with our product or services, we think about delighting our users first and delivering happiness. And today we announced a bunch of features that Elaine, you mentioned already. That essentially the premise for those features is to deliver happiness to our users, right? It's to enhance your meeting experience, make sure that it's not boring, right? With a lot of awesome virtual backgrounds, video, virtual backgrounds, reactions, a lot of animated and reactions with the sound as well that we introduced. And also, one of the interesting developments is Zaps is for all of you in the development community. We're opening up our platform so you could use our SDKs, you could use our APIs, and customize meeting experience depending on your customers' needs and workflows. So I highly recommend it. I promise it's not a commercial for Zoom, but if you go to marketplace.zoom.us, you can find more information.
Amazing. It's so cool to see that stuff happening. And I love the mission of just improving happiness. I think that's one of my father's favorite sayings is that happiness is an underrated commodity. And I think that applies to so many things. Just even surprising and delighting users with small features can go a long way. Very cool.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to products, right? Especially when it comes to products that you use every day, multiple times a day, there should be some element of delight and happiness and ease of use, of course.
Actually, as a product leader who's been in this space for a long time, how do you think about baking some of that into product? And is it more needed when we are not working in the same place? Does it become more of a challenge for product to actually bring those surprise and delight when you're working remotely?
Yeah, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a challenge per se, it's just a very new use cases, right? That it really stretches us to think about building products for those times when you don't necessarily have your coworkers or teammates around you, right? It's building products that ensure continuity along the user journey and kind of trying to make up for the loss of physical interactions.
So. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that either your team, you've done personally or a product that you've experienced outside of Zoom that has really done something like that you felt like was a great product experience?
Well, I would leave it up to you to judge. As far as product experiences, we try to keep things very simple and intuitive. When it comes to Zoom, every new product that we we launch at Zoom. We obviously have a design system, the one that encompasses user experience principles. One of them is obviously simplicity and delivering happiness. So should be easy for users to figure out. And the test is usually my mom or somebody's grandmother, if somebody is able to pick it up out of the box without, sending emails to support or just asking their grandson to help them. I think that would be a success.
Well, my grandmother hosted our Zoom Seder this year for Passover, so mission accomplished. It worked great.
Yes, that's the users usually your best feedback channel. So at Zoom, we try to listen to our users as much as possible. So yeah, I remember in the early days of Zoom, we didn't have that alias feedback at zoom.us, so I had to go work with our IT person who was one of the very few at a time. So it's feedback at zoom.us if you'd like to share some feature suggestions or requests or any type of feedback. We always welcome it.
Amazing. Well, one thing we had been discussing a few weeks ago actually is this quotation that I heard that it just resonated so strongly with me. It was actually from Vladimir Lenin, and said there are years when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. And I think we've all experienced the latter recently. And so I wanted to get your take on how you personally, your team, and people around you are dealing with change and what that looks like in all facets of that word.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually so funny because I was on the Ask Me Anything for Product Managers session this morning for Zoomtopia. And one of the questions was, what are the qualities of a good product manager? And my answer was the ability to adapt to change. Because it's so funny because change, historically, or whether it's biologically or psychologically, humans are not really good with change, right? We always like comfort. We always like predictability over change. However, change actually presents a lot of opportunities, and especially the way it relates to the startup space, to developers, is really opening up those new use cases, and it actually creates some problems, but a lot of those problems are worth solving with new technology solutions. So I think good product people, good engineers, good startup founders, they turn it to their advantage, and they really embrace change.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And I think the best product leaders and the best products themselves don't even realize it's forcing any kind of behavior change. It just feels so natural and becomes so second nature and intuitive. And so I totally see the same thing in terms of technology reshaping our behavior.
Yeah, and sometimes it's actually very interesting on the topic of change, how change can come from both sides. It could be external, right? We all saw this externality early this year that nobody could have anticipated, right? Yeah. So the way it forces you to adapt, but also people, product people or startup founders can drive change themselves, right? If they don't see the world changing at a pace that they would like to see, they can actually propel their product to a new level when they themselves drive change and not wait for the change to happen.
Yeah, 100% right. And for you, Zoom has been a relatively distributed company from the beginning, if I remember correctly. And so I guess you've been around for a long time as an early employee. As you guys have grown, have there been any, either rituals or processes that you guys have put in place that are very unique and that you think really help bring people together and make people feel like they're a cohesive unit?
Yes, definitely. Video helps.
I agree.
Fish plug. But I mean it, right? It's very important to see your coworkers when you're not in the same place, to kind of learn how they look like and be able to tell, looking at their facial expressions, how they feel. It's very important for building rapport, for building that very important working relationship, establishing trust early on. When let's say you work in the US and the other offices in Europe or Asia, when the cultures are different, when the norms are different, and video is really your only unifying factor. Beyond that, we also have a product called Zoom Chat, which I also helped build. And it's the product that allows you to communicate and stay in touch with your team before and after meetings. It's something that also helps when you're in different time zones. There's a lot of value to asynchronous communication. So you can send a message to your developer late at night, and then they reply to it the first thing they wake up in the morning, and they reply to it. So in a way, to some degree, it actually continues for 24/7 continuous development cycle. Right, so there is no downtime, which is another benefit of having remote teams, right? So at any given time, somebody's awake.
It's very true. I think that is one of those things that's a nice benefit, probably not something people were really thinking about. Maybe sometimes they were. Have you seen anybody? I could see myself, as you were talking about Zoom chat, which I've never used before, I could see myself taking a small video in Zoom on the video side and sending that with a message. Have you seen teams do that?
Yeah, sure.
That's a cool use case.
Yeah, definitely. Our roadmap is very robust. You might see something like that in the future.
Nice, great. Well, I guess we'll all be waiting to see all the new things you guys launch. You touched on something that I think is very top of mind for people in this synchronous versus asynchronous work, and I think even with my team, we've been struggling to figure out how we stay in sync while async. And Zoom really helps bring people together in much more synchronous communication. But I guess as you as a team leader, how do you think about synchronous versus asynchronous? What should happen when? And how do you make sure that you're not doing meetings for meeting's sake and things like that?
Yeah, it's a very important topic. I don't think anybody has figured it out fully yet.
Yeah.
Every team has its own dynamic, right? Every team has its own preferences, time zones. So to an extent, it needs to be kind of taken into account what the properties of the teams are, right? For us specifically, I think setting hours that anybody can be available when anybody can be reached is very important. So there's kind of like a unifying factor, right? Obviously, using chat, using collaboration, like document sharing. We use Jira extensively. So I guess for every team is going to be different. There is no hard and fast rule. But I would say it's about finding commonalities and finding things that work for everyone, right? Whether it's hours of the day that work for everyone when everyone is available, or tools for communication as well. I think it's good for a team to agree on the tool that they would use for messaging, right? Very often we see teams and customers, especially larger ones, everybody has a different preferences and they use the 5 different communication tools, and then you lose track to who are you communicating on what tool. So I think that brings a lot of efficiency if you kind of establish that discipline early on and agree on the tools that everyone's going to use. Hopefully Zoom, if it doesn't have to. And also I think what's very important is to think about boundaries that you would allow your team to set when it comes to their personal time, time to recharge, time to rejuvenate. Because working from home can really turn very easily to a 24-hour marathon. And if there are no boundaries set, then it's very easy to lose sight of your personal life or well-being. So I'd say as a leader, as a product leader, I prioritize that for my team. Whenever we have a mindfulness session or yoga session, I really want my team to actually take that time out of their busy day and dedicate to themselves. I think it's critical, especially in this day and age.
How have you personally been able to set boundaries? Are there kind of routines or habits you've developed that have worked well for you?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot, but actually I'm very excited about the thing that we announced this morning. And again, I promise you, this is not a shameless plug. This is it's a really cool feature that we did with Ariana Hathington. She's a founder of Thrive, which is basically a startup that focuses on mindfulness, well-being. And Thrive introduced an integration with Zoom Meeting where you'd be able to take 1 minute to think about positive things or meditate without leaving a Zoom meeting. So I'm really, really excited to to try that. Other than that, yeah, it's usually meditation. It's usually good sleep. I think it's very important. And also thinking about your schedule ahead of time, trying to be less reactive but more proactive about the schedule and really make the schedule work for you.
I love that, what you guys launched with Thrive. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. That sounds amazing.
And the cool part is that it's customizable, right? Like you can customize your own video or pictures that make you happy, and you can spend 60 seconds to look at that, to kind of recharge and quickly, put yourself in a positive mood.
Those are important little breaks to take during the day just to reset, center yourself again. I love it. It's also funny to hear you talking about the challenge of getting messaged on so many different platforms. Part of it's cultural, part of it's team. As a product leader, obviously highly cross-disciplinary team. I actually met with a company very recently that is trying to tackle that problem and try to unify all the messages saying, look, you choose your own tools. So we'll see where that goes. I find the same thing exists in my personal life. I have some friends that use WeChat, WhatsApp, Messenger, all those different things.
Right. And then the cognitive load that comes from, oh, Elaine, when was the last time we talked and what was it? Was it an email? Was it chat? Was it WhatsApp? And then it's just, so there's a lot of difficulty in making that communication happen.
Yes. And the search problem of where was that?
Yes. Yes. So now if we're talking about big companies, right, like this problem compounds dramatically. Yeah. So whoever is able to figure that out, I think it's going to be a next big startup idea.
On that topic, I guess, I mean, obviously Zoom is clearly one of the winners of this pandemic in the sense of just, really fulfilling a need for all types of users and all types of use cases. But your team is also likely scaled significantly. Have there been any things that you wish you would have gotten on top of earlier, or things that you've learned about scaling a team that quickly?
I think we really did not expect what happened early this year, right? Yeah. So it's not like there's a blueprint for that. For us, I think it's just we usually hire the best people that can hit the ground running, day one, and just help us run the business. It's very hard. Unfortunately, we're not in a position where we can hire somebody and help. Wait for them to ramp up and for like 2 or 3 months. We we really need to get the work done as soon as possible, considering all the challenges that we've been through.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I guess switching gears a little bit to some of the stuff on the app marketplace. I know I'm personally curious, and I've had this conversation with a few folks here, so I know people want to hear a little bit around what are some of the more interesting apps that are available on Zoom. What are some non-intuitive things that you've seen really be successful, or just ones that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm very excited about a lot of apps, and obviously the ones that have a lot of traction are very relevant to meetings, something like scheduling, calendars, right? The Calendly, meeting notes. There's a lot of those. I'm personally excited about the ones that make the use of AI in a creative way. Something that we, for example, have Theta Lake, which is a compliance app that allows all the financial institutions to really follow the conversations and to make sure that no compliance laws are breached. There's a lot of interesting, other interesting security applications that are very exciting as people looking for more private, more secure meetings. Anything that you can add on top of Zoom, I think it's a bonus. And also it helps your team to stay on top of things that need to be reviewed and just control your environment.
Very cool. And I guess on the flip side now, there have been so many new use cases that have opened up for video and live streaming that just never were a thing before. Everything from yoga, as you mentioned, or doing fitness classes, or cooking, or wine tasting, or things like that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a ton of that happening on Zoom, and now with on Zoom. What are some interesting creative ways that people have been taking advantage of video?
Other than streaming their weddings and birthdays?
That's definitely an interesting one. Have you attended a Zoom wedding?
Oh, not yet. I definitely attended a bunch of Zoom birthdays and get-togethers. So Yeah, I'd be curious. Maybe yours, Elaine?
Yeah.
So I would say, as far as creative use cases, probably the one that, and we always get, as product managers, actually, that's a funny story. We always get feedback from customers, whether it's a good or bad feedback, right? They email us, they send it to chat. And then there was this one guy that sent us I swear to God, this is a true story. He sent us an email complaining, how come Zoom, you don't work? I was trying to teach my girlfriend how to barbecue, burgers. And then my phone fell. And then it completely melted on the barbecue grill. All the while I was Zooming with my girlfriend. So I don't know. When we set out to build an enterprise product, we really didn't think that somebody would use Zoom to teach their girlfriend how to, barbecue their burgers over Zoom. But that's definitely a funny one. But of course, as far as like the useful ones, we do see a lot of interesting applications in telehealth. Where we do see the real ability to help patients that don't have the ability to travel, to see their doctors, especially in times like this, and obviously education. That's another one that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's something that we're seeing Gen Z adopting the product and customize it in the way that we've never thought about customizing. So these applications are very exciting to us.
That's cool. I think one of the more interesting use cases I've personally experienced was my team did a Zoom escape room. And that sounds like a weird concept, but it was so much fun. And it became this really cool, somewhat immersive experience that also felt like you had presence with other people. So I loved that. I would highly recommend other people try that too. Shockingly, it was really, really, really great.
Wow. Did you use a third-party add-on for that, or did you guys have to customize your own experience?
It was a third-party company, but what they do is they give you access. They essentially post in the Zoom chat. They give you a link to a Google Drive folder. And in that folder, there's a bunch of documents, and you have to go into each, and it pops something up on the screen, and you have to find clues and then chat back to the people who are organizing. So yeah, it was a clever way of navigating the world. I liked it.
I love it. Definitely another startup opportunity right there.
I agree. I guess on the topic of building presence with people, how do you think about that from a product perspective of establishing, presence, whether it's who's available, how you feel less, removed from somebody over video? What are some ways you're thinking about that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask, because right now, obviously in remote day and age, it's very important to know if your teammate is available to chat or to meet. We do actually have a presence in Zoom Client, in the mobile app and desktop app. You can actually, if you're in contact with somebody, you can see if they're available or if they're in the meeting, and then you can message them before the meeting and say, hey, can we have a video chat really, really quickly? And building on that is just allowing users to customize their presence with things like do not disturb, or customize their kind of working hours, right? If they're out of office, adding that status as well. So it's very clear, right? Because the challenge is that if you cannot turn to your coworker and see that they're not there, then it's kind of hard to know if they're available or not. So relying on the Zoom app beyond the meeting, I think it's helpful for presence as well.
Yeah, it's so true. I find personally that when you're in a physical building and somebody's meeting's running over, you can see that they're still in that room and they'll come and get you when they're done. But when you have back-to-back Zoom meetings, you don't know that person is actively trying to leave their last meeting and join you. So creating that ability to really seamlessly signal, here's what's going on right now. Here's what my status is. I think it's going to be really powerful in the near future.
Definitely.
Well, we're running out of time, but I have one more question for you. So I think the culture building is something that is a challenge and very different in distributed teams. And would love to hear what you guys have done to build and enable culture as you've scaled rapidly and had to do so in a remote environment.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's still a challenge, right? Like it doesn't matter how big or small the company is. But it really comes down to the founding principles. From the very beginning, our founder, Eric, has been very clear on the values for himself and for the company. And it's all about care and delivering happiness to customers. So every decision can be evaluated through this framework, right? Does this come from a place of care? Is this going to help deliver happiness to our customers? And then kind of the trade-offs become much easier. And I think culture is really driven by a lot of values and norms that are instilled by the founder, usually.
I could not agree more. And I think Eric truly lives and breathes those values. If you follow him on Twitter or any of the other social channels, it does not matter who you are, he will respond. He will do everything he can to help. And I've seen that from all the other employees at Zoom too. So I feel like you're spot on there, that it really does trickle down. And it also aligns employees who might be looking for a new job to those type of companies. I think aligning your personal values and personal missions is really critical to your success and happiness.
Absolutely, absolutely. It acts as a filter, right? It's a self-selected group. Usually, and then that's the case for any company, any startup, right? That's if somebody's attracted to your company, your startup, it's probably because how your startup is projecting itself in the world, right? If it's looking on the ground, if it's working on a groundbreaking product that's going to help a huge problem that is very meaningful to the person, they're going to want to work for you, right? So
absolutely. 100%. Well, Mila, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your very, very busy day, I'm sure, to chat with us. And if people want to learn more about some of the stuff you guys are launching, what's coming down the pike, or get in touch, how should they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's just a feedback, feature request, it's feedback@zoom.us. But my email is mila@zoom.us. If you want to get in touch with me directly, feel free to ping me. I'm also available on LinkedIn and Twitter. So yeah, it's in this day and age, it's very easy to find somebody. So feel free to do so. Feel free to connect. I'm happy to meet you.
Thank you, Mila. Really appreciate the time.
Of course. Take care.
Bye.